Thank you. Good evening. First of all, let's hear for Kaylin. Thank you for everything you do. Brian Boyle as well. We appreciate just the logistics and the work. We know it's not. We had a conversation last week about booking libraries, and it's hard to get a space in a library these days. Like, I think I have connections. I think I can help you out. But so first of all, good evening to everyone. Thank you for coming here tonight, and thank you for Representative Wilson and Tom for joining us as well. I made the I don't I control my schedule less and less these days. If it were up to me, I'd be here the whole time. They told me yesterday that I couldn't come here, so I figured out how to come here at least for the beginning, just to say thank you to each and every one of you, to all of you for being here tonight. I think everybody here knows how important to me and how important to our community accountability is in everything that we do. I also know that many of you are frustrated by recent activities, recent incidents that were caught on film by Newcastle County Police. One use of force incident in particular, and another one that I'm sure we'll talk about. I just want you to know I'm frustrated too. We all need to do better, and that's why we're here today, to ensure that our police and our government is accountable to the public that we serve. That's why we made a few years ago body cam footage public in a single incident, and then later reviewed our regulations and made sure we changed things so that, as a matter of practice, no matter who the county executive or county council is, body-worn camera will be released to the public. That's also why we asked for an investigation by the professional standards and use of force units, and that's why I've asked the Police Accountability Board to review all policies, trainings, and practices regarding de-escalation and cultural competency in how we police. Newcastle County was the first, and I believe still the only government in the state of Delaware to establish a Police Accountability Board. The first, but not the only. Thanks, Brian. Good hand signals. To establish the Police Accountability Board under House Bill 206. We worked with various stakeholders, many of whom are in the room, to create the board, Office of Defense Services, NCCPAB, of course, our great county police, the ACLU, the Delaware Center for Justice, and the Metropolitan Wilmington Urban League. I'm sure I'm forgetting others as well, individuals and groups that came forward to assist. Your input helps empower the board to better engage and represent the public and help improve policies around police misconduct, complaints, discipline, use of force, and more. And we think prepared us for an evening like tonight where we can have healthy dialogue about moving our police agency forward. Finally, I just wanted to say thank you, that I'm proud of the high quality of members of the board. I tell people that we're open for, if anyone wants to be on a county board, there are plenty of slots available. For this board in particular, it was highly competitive. And I appreciate so many of you raising your hand to apply and to be interviewed and to serve. If you take some time reading through the biographies of our members, you'll be impressed, not just with their background, but the diversity of experiences represented in the board up here. I think it's fair to generalize and say they agreed to join this board because they believe, like I do, that police should be held to a higher standard. The board members also, I think it's fair to say, understand, like I do, that police work can be extremely challenging. When you put yourself in the shoes of an officer or attempt to do so, that we must do better to equip our officers with the training policies and procedures to succeed in challenging situations. I should also add, it is part of state law that every member of this board have a certain amount of training and background in policing. Because it's at the early stages, all of that training and background has not been completed, right? But we're working on it, right? We're working on it. It is in process. So let me just close by saying I have 3 requests for tonight's meeting. Number 1, anyone who wants to speak should be given the opportunity to speak. As I would say when I was a math teacher, not exactly when you want to speak, but everybody should be given an opportunity to speak. And I know that there's a plan to allow sufficient public comment during tonight's meeting. When I say that in planning board meetings, sometimes that means it's going till 4 a.m. in the morning. Hopefully that won't be the case tonight. There are clearly, and certainly I think we all know, significant disagreements in this room. That's not a bad thing. That's sort of the way it should be in a democracy and in local government. It's really important that we treat each other with respect. I think a lot of us know what's going on in our country, outside of this room, outside of our county, outside of our state. It's really, really important to me, and I know a lot of people in this room and in our community, that the dialogue here remains respectful with an understanding that there are serious differences of opinions, and airing those is a good thing. And number three, I just encourage all of us to be solution oriented. My guess is pretty much everyone in this room understands that there's a problem of some sort, probably defined in different ways by different people. Let's work together on solutions to make sure that future days, future incidents are better than past days, even recent past events. So thank you all for choosing to be here tonight. And without further ado, thanks so much to our board chair, Kim. The floor is yours.
So all of our board meetings are public, and that is the design of our bylaws. So what that means is at every board meeting, there will always be some business that we have to take care of. We will try to go through it rather quickly unless it needs more time so that we can make sure we have enough time for public comment, because we're here to listen to you. But I always like to put that out there so that you are aware. So as you all know, one of the agenda items we have is to discuss the recent incident that most of us, if not all of us, have seen on video. We will go through some of our business and then we will bring that topic up. We will have public comment, but then we will need to close that even just momentarily to get through the rest of the agenda. And at the end of our agenda is another opportunity for more public comment. It can be about that, or it can be anything else that you have brought that you would like to share with us. Every time someone comes up, they will be given 2 minutes to speak, and we'll go through those instructions when we get closer to the public comment. We do have this room until 9 p.m. and then the library closes. We will be asked to leave. So unfortunately, we will have to at that time if it doesn't naturally end by that time. So the first thing I would do on the agenda is I'd like to share briefly about our bylaws, just to set the tone for what the Accountability Board is designed to do. So reading from the bylaws. The board generally shall advise the Department of Public Safety and the Division of Police on policy, training, and other issues relating to or affecting the department and the communities served by the department. The board shall conduct community outreach, hold public forums, review complaints as well as arrest data, and provide recommendations regarding police policies, and future police reform. As a disclaimer, we cannot perform independent investigations of police nor public safety incidents. We were not granted subpoena powers in our initial charter. So it's important just to put that out there and to remind people what our abilities are and are not. So next we do a roll call of our board members so we can have that on record on who is here. The Kim Eppiheimer chair, here. Vice Chair Kevin Evans is not here. Pamela Brooks Grimes, present. Norwood Ullman,
Here.
Krista Davis, here. Dr. Jenna DiLuterio, Sean Green,
Here.
Bishop George Gibson, Doug Hamilton,
Yes.
Deshaun Nixon,
Present.
and Dr. Tanya Whittle.
Present.
And then we have non-voting members as well. Our public safety director is Vaughn Bond.
Here.
And our chief of police designee is normally Captain Brian Faulkner, who's unable to be with us this evening. So in his place, we welcome Captain Len. Thank you for joining us. Are there any recommendations to the changes of the agenda this evening? All right, hearing none, we will proceed with the agenda as is. Next, are there any recommended changes to the June minutes of our Newcastle County Police Accountability Board meeting? All right, hearing none, they are adopted as present. The next item on the agenda is board training. So as a board, we are expected to complete 20 hours of training on related topics to help us with our appointments. I'm going to turn the floor over to Caitlin for more information. And the floor is yours.
Thank you. So I'm actually going to turn the floor over to Director Bond and Captain Leonard to talk a little bit about their Citizens Police Training Academy. You all were given a possible schedule at the May meeting. It is an 8-week program of about 3 hours a week, but Newcastle County PD is willing to be flexible with us in terms of scheduling. So I'll pass it back over to Kim or Director Bond. Is there anything that I missed that you'd like to share? About
Thank
CPE?
you. So the regular Citizen Police Academy is 8 weeks. It meets once every Tuesday for about 3 hours or so. And basically what it does is it gives insight into the basic training that our police officers go through. It touches on everything from interviews to evidence collection to how investigations are conducted. There's a hands-on portion where they actually, the class participates in making vehicle stops, things of that nature. So all of that, actually get into case law a little bit. So all of that will be afforded to the board, should we choose to go that route during the full Citizen Police Academy.
Are there any questions from the board or any comments about the training?
Yes, is that the only option that as far as available trainings that the board is recommending to take?
No, there are more. So this is the first of many options. When we reviewed it, it looked like it covered a lot of opportunities that were answering some of the questions we had early on. But no, there'll be more.
Yeah, there's you. It's up to you all. It's kind of like a rolling type of project where if you all come across a training that you'd like to adopt, you can just let us know and we'll try to make it happen. But you have to do at least 20 hours. So that's not the maximum, it's just the minimum.
The expectation that we'll be reading training together as a group or independently.
Together as a group.
What's the flexibility?
We're flexible. I think it's up to Newcastle County Police Department regarding the CPA, but I mean, they're pretty flexible. If you all want to go with another training, then we can talk about flexibility, but for CPA, we're willing to be as flexible as possible for the board.
There's some discussions internally to make sure that we get it into a time and a place that it's, not as rigid with every Tuesday as I've been. I work with everyone's schedule, but something that if we need to pare down certain parts to make sure we get it, the bulk of the material in. But there's been discussions about you all going through either individually as a group or going through with other folks. And I think, again, that applies completely up to whatever you all decide. But there will be flexibility and won't be as structured and as rigid. And if we have to move things around, we just find it to be based upon the material that you all have seen within the curriculum to be probably check a lot of the boxes of things that would be of interest to you as you proceed through your term.
Those HVs who's on the assignment, you could pretty spun out.
Yes, you have to complete the 20 hours within a year of your appointment. These are great questions. Any more questions?
Wonderful, thank you. So the next item on our agenda is new business. And this is where we will begin the discussion about the incidents that have brought many of us here, particularly the ones that were captured on the video with the police interactions with civilians. These videos were distributed to the board as well as the body cam footage that was released for all of us to be able to review. So I'd like to start by opening it up to the board to see if you have any specific questions, comments that you would like to offer before we open it up to the public.
So I know that we submitted questions for Director Bond and Captain Leonard to be kind of prepared for this discussion. So is that the time now to ask those questions? So I do have 3 questions that after reviewing the video came top to mind. And I'm wondering if you can explain the escalation techniques that are used during traffic stops, particularly when the situation escalates. In a hypothetical scenario, when an individual becomes resistant, what specific steps are officers trained to follow to manage the situation without unnecessary force?
So Good evening, everyone. So, question is, can you explain the de-escalation techniques used on traffic stops, in particular when situations escalate? So the main thing is when an officer conducts the vehicle stop, the first thing that the officer is doing is they are looking out for, they're concerned about their safety, they're training for their safety in terms of approaching the vehicle to make sure that, number one, they're safe from any traffic hazards that may be present. Number two, going up on that vehicle, checking the inside of that vehicle as they're walking up to it to make sure that there are no threats there. They're also, prior to that, they're actually calling out the vehicle registration number and things of that nature to see whether or not there's any kind of information that they can learn that pertains to the occupants of the vehicle. When they get up to the vehicle, if a situation, the majority, and I know that we're here to talk about these incidents here, but the vast majority of the vehicle stops that are made, they're made without any issues or any problems whatsoever. But in cases where you do see an increase in conflict or confrontation between the officer and the operator of the vehicle, the fun thing that we try to train in our police academy training and service training is to talk to the people to try to bring them down a little bit. Try to explain what the stop is for, the reason why they're being stopped, ask them for their information. If a person continues to be irate and upset, many times you'll find that the officers, once they get the documents, they'll go back. In times when a person is going to be arrested and that person is resistant to coming out of the vehicle, then the officer will be put in a position where they have to make a decision on how they're going to get that person out of the vehicle. Oftentimes, before you get to that point, you're using things such as asking the person calmly. You're trying to be polite to them, saying, ma'am, sir, I need your information. This is the reason why we stopped you. And you're trying to bring the level down so that it doesn't get to that point. That's the primary focus, and that's the primary goal. Unfortunately, and the majority of the time, it does work. But there are going to be sometimes, and some individuals, and some cases where it doesn't, and a person is still irate, they're still up here. And as much as we train and we try to tell officers, look, keep your cool, keep your calm on the side of the room, sometimes officers, and I really admit this, there are times when officers get irate and they get upset as well. And instead of trying to calm down and de-escalate the situation, and I'm not saying that that's the case in either one of these, I'm just talking about what my experience has been and what I've seen over 30 plus years in the business. But the focus is always has been to try to calm the situation so that it doesn't escalate to the point where you are in a physical confrontation with a person. Now, once an officer has made up their mind and the probable cause exists that they're going to take the person into custody, then they're going to ask the person to get out of the vehicle, step out the vehicle. When you get out, put your hands behind your back. You're going to be arrested. We're going to apply handcuffs on you. If they meet resistance to that, and the person does not want to get out of the car, then the police officer is in a pretty tough situation, because if you've done something to the point that we're now going to an effect arrest, and the person is saying, no, I'm not going to be arrested, at that point, the officer has to make a decision on what they're going to do in terms of taking that person into custody. Obviously, if they're at the point where they can make an arrest, they're not going to let that person drive off, especially if that person hasn't complied and given a driver's license or any information. They're not going to let that person drive off, so they're going to have to take them into custody. The goal is, at that point, if you have to remove somebody from the vehicle, you want to do it in a manner that using as little force as possible. Now, what you hope is that, if you are able to go in there, if you're able to grab onto an arm and help the person out of the vehicle without them fighting, and you can get them and get them in handcuffs, which happens a lot, and you get them in handcuffs and you put them in the car, then nothing happens. Then there's not a use of force, no more than putting hands on a person and removing them from the vehicle. But if you go to try to get them out the car and they don't want to get out the car, and you have a lawful right to make that arrest, then obviously in that case, in that kind of situation, the officer is going to have to use that force that's necessary in order to get that person out of the vehicle in order to put the handcuffs on. So at the end of the day, the goal is that any interaction that we have with anyone or that police officers have with anyone, you don't want to see it escalate to the point that you have to use any kind of physical force to make the arrest. But unfortunately, there are times when you do encounter individuals who do not want to comply. And as I speak with kids and we talk to young people, I understand it. Sometimes it can be frustrating, you get pulled over and so forth. But the one thing that I think we have to keep in mind is, the one thing I would tell people to keep in mind is that if there was something that was done to you that was wrong, something that was unjust, I don't think that it's the appropriate time right then and there on the side of the road to try to have that argument. You know, my thing is if there's something that happened to you, there are mechanisms, there's procedures in place that you can certainly make the complaint and lodge a complaint. And if you feel like, you know, this was a case where you shouldn't have received that citation, that is why we have the court system. You can go to court and you can definitely fight it out in court. But on the side of the road, I don't know if that's the best place for you to try to, you know, rectify that problem or solve that problem that you're having at that time. Because when you do, that's a lot of times when you start to see that things escalate to the point that there's some type of force being used to affect the arrest.
Thank you, Director Bond. It's my understanding that there is not a standalone de-escalation policy, but it's intertwined with a lot of the other policies.
That's correct.
And that's how that is sort of used. And I know that you had shared in an email to us that you would be open to there being a potential de-escalation policy and that we could possibly help find recommendations for, use ones that are used in other parts of the country.
Yeah, that's true. And I think this, it's not, it's part of, as you see, when you go through the training, the CPA training, if you all go through that, you'll see that de-escalation is interwoven in everything that we do in terms of interaction with individuals, especially if it looks like it's going to be a situation that could likely end up being a use of force type of situation. Caitlin she did send a policy, I forget what agency it was de-escalation policy to me. I looked at it, I thought it was an outstanding policy. I think it's something that we certainly should come together with the board and the police department to work on. I think it captures a lot of what we talk about in our training, but we have not reduced it to a standalone policy. So it's something that I'm all in favor of. And I think that, you know, by doing that, I think that, again, it meets the goals of improving our level of service to the society.
But other than that, while it's not necessarily a standalone policy, it's a separate standalone training module. However, last year, I believe we got a federal grant through Justice Assistance Grants to put together an 8-hour training block that consisted of actual interaction, scenario-based training, very little lecture training. We found it's not necessarily effective, and then a virtual reality component that went along with that. So while we don't have a policy that specifically governs, you know, this is the manner in which you should de-escalate. Because I mean, I think we can all recognize that there's going to be times where it's not plausible. We can't have a carved instead of policy that says you must come out and try this, and this, because the situation has already started at a much more elevated level. It's very similar to the application of force. You know, there's not a requirement that mandates that we follow step by step on this ladder-like approach, because what we found is that actually imparts more injury on others. And the same would exist in these de-escalation policies. Just to reread your question, sir, and you talk about specifically and understanding the hypothetical that we're in. I think another thing that needs to be considered is the escalators that occur prior to the stop and prior to the encounter. For things like situations like time of day, location, how long it took a person to stop. Does it look as though they're being compliant to being actually pulled over and stopping? You know, those are things there that may take an officer, as the director said, and have them come out at a much higher level than, you know, what we may think is appropriate. But there are things to consider that are going through the officer's mind at a particular time that may have them getting out of the car at a higher level than what, you know, a layperson looking at it may think that is appropriate. So I just wanted to piggyback on the director's comments about policies. Talia, the Commission on the Accreditation of Law Enforcement Agencies, is under the command that I currently supervise. So at the director's direction, we have pulled policies from all over the country in the process of gathering them to provide them to you all. To piggyback on the ones that Galen has sent to us, if there be a broad variety from all across the country, I think that we can work with something that is going to work for everyone.
Thank you for that. Any other comments from the board before we open it up?
Well, I did submit 3 questions,
Yeah.
but I'll just ask one more, just out of the interest of time, my colleagues who also might have questions. My other question that I have is, how does the Castle County Police Department evaluate the effectiveness of its de-escalation and use of force training programs? Are there regular reviews or updates to these protocols?
So the training schedule is updated yearly. But with regards to the actual review of de-escalation or situations that could have been potentially de-escalated or not, those are all done in conjunction with the use of force review unit, because generally speaking, there's some sort of use of force that accompanies a potential to de-escalate a situation. Now the unit has within its purview an opportunity to review any encounter between a citizen and an officer, whether it be a use of force situation or one where we could do better just in our communication with members of the public. So that is something that our use of force unit does on a regular basis, and then provides feedback. It's not uncommon. We do have a revolving training program that the director probably speak more to this, having eyes on the professional development unit and training recommendation. But it is not uncommon for us to send officers back through what they used to call like verbal judo, which is being offered to basically help you learn how to communicate with you. Because what we were finding in some situations is that it was helpful, and a lot of the stuff could have been avoided if the approach was different from the initial onset. So there's a constant evaluation of our encounters with the public, whether they result force or they don't, or whether they're positive, whether they're negative, to see what works in the positive encounter and where we can improve in others. And the majority of that review is done by our use of force unit, and then if warranted, our professional standard.
Anyone else from the board like to say anything or have any questions? Yes, Tanya. Go ahead, floor is yours.
Question. Pretty much clarity from that. That's all, but are the officers involved in the 2 occurrences, are they being held accountable in any way? Why not? And if they are, how? The officers that was involved in this incidents that happened, the 2 separate incidents, are they being held accountable in any type of way? They are, why not, and how?
So as we put out in the press release that came from the division outside of the executive, we have a joint investigation going on with regards specifically to the Rural Farm incident down Route 40. There's an investigation by our professional standards unit, obviously our use of force unit, which is more of the policy procedure based, and then a consultation kind of bilateral investigation with the Department of Justice, which the Division of Civil Rights and Public Trust, which is well within their purview. I think last legislative session, there was an expansion of their role where they can proactively seek out cases if they were so inclined. It wasn't just necessarily based on referral. We've been in contact with them since learning of this. I think it's a little bit week. There are other internal investigations being conducted with regards to the other incident involving the young men. They're still in the process. So for me to give you, a result of those wouldn't be appropriate at this time, but they are being conducted.
And I think it's important to point out that any time when an officer has to use force, whether it results in a viral video or not, if an officer uses force, then the officer is required to be not only their standard report for the incident, but a response to resistance report. We changed it since I retired. And that's a report they have to fill out detailing the circumstances, what type of force they used, whether was there or whether or not injuries. This report then goes not only to just the immediate supervisor, but it also goes up to the professional standards unit for them to take a look at, as well as the use of force, the use of force review. unit to take a look at it to see. One of the things that I'm very pleased with, we started a use of force review shortly, I think, before I retired. We started working on it, and now we have it up and running. And the great thing about that is prior to that, we didn't have that. So we relied heavily on our professional standards units to conduct their investigation. And as a result of their investigations, we would look at it and see, okay, well, what can we do better? Is this effective? Going to your question on, the effectiveness of, certain actions by the officers, is this something that we want to continue doing, or is this something we can change? And one of the things that has come out and that's I'm very pleased with is with our this review unit, they have put together, they look at each case and they come back with ideas and suggestions on how we can better service the residents, how our officers can be better trained. If there's additional training that they need, they'll be able to provide that kind of information so that we can get those officers trained. So I think it's been a great step in the right direction for us. And I think it goes a long way in terms of helping us to determine whether or not something is effective versus not effective.
It's important to note that those response to resistance reports they're not just for, incidents similar to what you all referring to that the incident on Route 40. Anything more than come with me, we're doing this, and pull away and resistance to that triggers the use of that particular data insertion module. So it's in all ranges of use of force. Pointing a handgun at someone, pointing a taser at someone, displaying your ass. And one of the things that we built into place, and you'll see it, I think, eventually come out of the post commission down at Dover is we already had it. We had it since I started an early warning system, right? So within a designated period of time, a particular officer has discipline that is, conduct towards the public, the manner in which they're speaking to the public generates complaints or active mounting vehicles or uses of force. That triggers an alert that say there's 3 of those within a designated period of time. Outside of the general review that they get from our use of force team, they get a much more in-depth review to determine if there's training that needs to be modified to correct, maybe misapplication of force or maybe techniques that we're teaching incorrectly at the academy. So it's a living, breathing process that gets modified all the time. The use of force review unit is not uncommon. The director knows they use this the conference room. When they review incidents of force, whether it be taser applications or physical, they sit down, they analyze it frame by frame. And I mean, it takes them hours upon hours because they just click frame by frame to see kind of what happens, read police reports, read response and resistance reports. And if they see something that an officer could do better, they bring them into the conference room, go through it frame by frame and discuss how to improve, how to improve the application of force, or, hey, this is kind of how you should have treated this situation when I eliminated this, or, hey, this worked really well. Continue to do this in the future. I think the engagement that unit has with the people that are in it is really helpful in helping us move forward.
Yes, please, thank you. A couple of things. It was mentioned, I believe by Captain Leonard, about a 8-hour module that was introduced about de-escalation.
Yes.
Is that something that the board could include as part of our training, to have exposure to that 8-hour training, or at least?
Yeah, the VR stuff would obviously, virtual reality stuff would be included because we do incorporate that within the Citizens Police Academy for several things. One, taser teaching, de-escalation, and then there's also a handgun shoot type module that we have, very similar to the older ones you may have seen, where it's actually like it's all virtual reality now. The PowerPoint stuff we can send to you in advance so that you have it. I wouldn't want to bore you, have you sit through that. But I think what you'll see, and when we can incorporate it, I'll talk to Captain Faulkner about it, is maybe a couple of the scenarios that we had used in the training that we went through last year could be incorporated into, even if it's just one night of getting people in front of you, walk through the scenarios, and then running out people through the I think it would be helpful because they run the gamut from car stops to domestic situations to people in that culture.
So the next couple of questions that I have, a lot of it has to do with definitions and trying to gain understanding. And I apologize up front for hair splitting, but That's what I do. So just listening to, what both of you have been saying, and I'm thinking, a lot of my comments go back to, what Director Bond was saying, but in response to the initial questions about the escalation and handling of situations, I recognize that you said that officer safety is a concern and that before even stopping, there are steps that are taken for officer safety and, approaching the vehicle, additional steps. I'm curious where the concern of safety from the citizens' perspective comes into this. How much are the officers being trained to think about what the citizen may be thinking and experiencing, particularly from a trauma-informed perspective? So, so some of the words, for instance, that I think it's important that we on the board understand, but also the public. So as they're making their own actions and decisions, they are following legal orders, but also holding up their rights. All right. So for instance, is saying no resistance?
So by definition, would be passive.
Okay. All right. So
Depending on the context of what you're using.
okay. Right. So is inaction considered resistance? Again, I'm guessing.
Passive.
There was a couple of times where it was mentioned that everyone agrees that we should use as little force as possible, but a number of times where in referencing what might be legally authorized, that may be what the officer has to use. They determine that they have to use that amount of force. I'm wondering if in your reviews, do you look just for whether or not a legal threshold was crossed? Or do you also advise your officers on best practice? Like technically this didn't violate their rights, but you were yelling at someone who was trembling. So maybe take that into I guess.
100% part of the analysis. And I think if you were to talk to Lieutenant Bonnebush, who oversees the use of force unit, off to the side or even publicly, he would tell you that the bulk of their work actually lies in that side of, yes, you're okay in this legal threshold based upon the status of the case law that exists. However, were there ways to do it better? Were there ways to do it more effectively? Did you notice X or Y in this particular person? Positively and negatively. In some of the situations there, hey, you chose this very minimal level of force and interaction with this person, but did you happen to see this outlier over here, or was your tunnel vision so laser focused that you were not paying attention to good, bad, or indifferent that surrounded? But I would say that I'd be comfortable in saying to you that we confirm that the bulk of his work is actually moving beyond the legal threshold and into how we improve the level of service so that the injury and impact, truthfully, not just injury, is minimal.
And the last question I have, I know you can't speak to a particular situation and there's no way to predict everything. But if I am, as a citizen, see lights flash behind me and I'm in a situation I don't feel safe pulling over, maybe there's not a shoulder, or maybe it's dark and no one's around. What are my rights? Like, can I call 911 and say, hey, I'm actually going to be stopping at the Walmart that's a mile up the road? Or would that be considered something as
That we would
they're not
encourage.
resisting, or they are resisting?
No, I think there's certain things you can do that show that, yes, I recognize that your presence behind me, I understand what you're attempting to do, right? A lot of those things, we would recommend, and we've taught this in high schools and different community centers. You put your four-way flashers on, motion out the window, like I see, or, I'm going to pull over, and then definitely call 911. Because what's going to happen the minute that call triggers, you're going to say, I'm getting pulled over. I don't know the police agency. I mean, one of the very good things about Delaware and Newcastle County being what it is, it's one of 3 dispatch centers that is going to be able to recognize that. And they all have access to the same computer data. So I think that's a really good idea. So you could say, listen, I'm not trying to flee. I'm not trying to run. I don't intend to. I'm not very comfortable with where I'm trying. It's dark. it's the middle of the night, I'm gonna travel up the road to this particular spot. All those are, I think it's helpful if you acknowledge the fact that you recognize that a legal traffic stop, whether you agree with it or you don't, it is started, is really helpful in situations.
And a lot of times, I think when we talk about safety, when we ask about the safety of the drivers, that part of the officer's responsibility is that if they are initiating a vehicle stop and that vehicle stop is not in a safe location, that officer is expected to get on the intercom system and tell the person to maybe drive up further or pull into the parking lot because there's not a shoulder there. So they are doing that. And I tell my daughters, and I just seen shown the other day, a couple weeks ago, where there was a documentary about a man that was going around raping women, and he had lights in his vehicle, and it was an unmarked vehicle. And so I tell my daughters that when you're driving at night and you can't tell, all you see are the lights, you set your four-way, your hazard lights on, you continue to drive until you get to a safe place. Slow down, don't make any evasive move, don't speed up, slow down and go, because unfortunately, it's easy to get your a hold of those lights and have them installed on the vehicle. So I certainly would understand that if you're making a vehicle stop and it's the middle of the night, and I had it happen to me several times when I was a patrol officer, and I understood why they were doing it and it was not a problem at all. At no point did I feel threatened. But if a person takes off, and they're driving now, and it looks like they're trying to evade me, well, now it's going to take me up to here because I'm not quite sure what's going on.
Anyone else from the board?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
My question is, when a citizen is informed that a citizen's arrest is being made, could you explain to us what an actual citizen's arrest is?
To be honest with you, I know it's a cliche term you hear a lot on TV, et cetera. I would have to learn to the lawyers in the room. It's actually originally the police officer or read by.
Point of the video when the young man was detained, that sort of jargon was stated to him, which I'm 50-something years old. So to my young man, I'm a mom of two young men. They just have a clue as to what that terminology means. And of course, some of us have a natural institutional fear of being detained by an officer. So in some cases, points, they will flee. So what, in a situation where the video that we've all seen, the young man was told to stop, and that type of terminology was stated to him. He asking why he was being detained, and I know all of our conversations have been about it being considered passive, to say, or to question why he's being detained. And yet, he really was not provided with an explanation.
To that specific situation, I would say that his questioning of why he was stopped, why he was being given reasonable questions, he should have been, an answer should have been provided. I don't specifically, and I watched it several times, and I don't know if it's directly correct. I don't recall that specific language. I'm not saying it didn't. I don't recall that, but again, we'll
Yes.
Yeah, was
And that was,
Yeah, I think there was some confusion again, not that.
because the officer said to him, he said for a traffic stop, and the young man said, I wasn't even driving.
Exactly.
And then he said, the officer came back and said pedestrian stop. And that's what he said.
which to, young men or just, these as intimidation. So I guess that's what my question was. So when he asked, that was considered passive,
No.
behavior, because he totally was like, I'm trying to process and understand.
No, I wouldn't say his questioning, again, I don't think his questioning would be resistance at all. I think it's a reasonable question that you should have been provided an answer. I think where, and again, I've been watching and not having it in front of me, there were some situations, there were some instances where the yes, stop, you have to stop, and continuance to walk away is passive resistance. Okay, obviously, once you were to take off running, like then it's active time. Again, there are definitions that we use internally that govern the application thereafter. But the mere questioning why being stopped is no different than you doing it in your car. The reason that they say, I will say in this situation without deep diving into it, because we're not really allowed to, but pedestrian violation all fall within element, right? So to say I'm conducting a traffic stop for you, I don't want to say it's 6-1 heck of the other because the infraction itself. So I would say that's probably where the dispute came down in that situation. However, the actual asking of why is not resistance at all. It's a reasonable question that we instruct our people to provide an answer to. Does it have to be immediate? Again, if there's an active level of resistance, we're not going to stop and say this is what it is, but ultimately that conversation will occur. It has to occur.
Can I just follow up on something that you're saying? So if the code falls within a traffic violation, the child was not in a car, that language is confusing outright. And just looking at the situation, do you guys be playing around with adolescent and how children work out the relevant circumstances?
Specifically to that topic, no, I don't think it would be that in depth. But there are courses or instruction that we offer in our in-service trainings that speak directly to that speak directly to engaging with different levels of competency, whether it be inhibited by age, whether it be inhibited by substance abuse, whether it be mental acuities, et cetera. But to specifically say, hey, this is how the adolescent mind develops and what they understand and what they don't. These could be some roadblocks to effective communication. I would say that specific topic is not. There are a broader range topics of interacting with different levels of competency, different levels of impairment, different levels of education, social class, et cetera, but nothing is specific.
So you guys look at what it means and looks like to interact with the child to not investigate how children basically process information over time, right? Like if I were to process anything different with a 22-year-old, like still not fully over there yet. Like if that's not something that you guys can do.
Any other comments or questions?
Two incidents that took place. I think when you mentioned about the officer and the investigation, are they going to help the problem? If so, how? At this point, that's one. And then I would like to know the de-escalation strategy. Who determines what works and what doesn't? Because if you have a person who had bad experience with being pulled over or dealing with the police, and they had past traumas, they're going to react a certain way. You get behind me, I'm going to automatically be like, awesome. Here they go. Here they go. I'm gonna be like, here they go. Even though my paperwork is correct. So therefore, my mindset is already going to be negative once they pulling up behind me. So you said that when you're in a dark place, certain officers brains do certain things. That's book stuff. That don't happen. But when they get behind you, they gonna get you wherever they got you at. You know what I mean? You might have officers who say my safety was in jeopardy, so I pulled over in the dark. That wouldn't have made it better either. You know what I'm saying? But we see how many times people get pulled over in dark places and there's no particular protocol in place. So I really want to know who is monitoring the escalation strategy and who determines if they're effective.
So a lot of times, as I said, majority of the time when you're doing vehicle stops and you have interaction with people, there's today there may have been 200 vehicle, 150 vehicle stops in Jamaica, 100 vehicle stops in Jamaica, and there's not a single. And sometimes those situations, those vehicle stops, when they initially started, they might have been at a heightened state. And between the officer and the person, it came down. De-escalation. And in situations like that, we may never know that. We may never know that what the officer had de-escalated. Unfortunately, the ones that we find out about are the ones that happen similar to this one right here. So we continue to train, continuously train on how to better interact with the public, how to better conduct vehicle stops. We're constantly looking at other policies from other departments. We're looking at situations that have occurred in other agencies. We have now the benefit of the body worn camera footage. Supervisors now, unlike when I was a supervisor, they can go back now. And if you have officers that work for you, those supervisors are now pulling up the videos. Not if there's not even a worse situation occurs. They're pulling up and they're reviewing the body worn camera footage of their officers to see, okay, how are they conducting their business? How are they conducting the vehicle stops? Or how are they interacting when they go on a domestic ball inside someone's house? So you have that benefit, and all the supervisors are encouraged to do that. And it is being done on a regular basis, and the supervisors, the lieutenants have to provide a monthly report, and in that report, well, let me clear it, sure. But I know when I was chief, in those reports, they documented how many times, how many body worn camera footages were viewed by supervisors during the course of that month. And again, it's a checks and balance to make sure that we're doing things. It's we try to do everything to be proactive with it, and we catch a lot of things, but unfortunately, sometimes things are going to happen, and we find out about it after it happens. And when we find out about it after it happens, we certainly do take all the steps that we're taking right now. Someone asked, what are these officers being held accountable? It's too early to say right now because the investigation is still ongoing. But anytime when there's a use of force, there is an investigation that's conducted. And that investigation isn't concluded within a day or two because oftentimes you have not only the public viewing the body worn camera footage, but you have the internal investigations being conducted. You have interviews that are being conducted, and the interviews don't often happen in the same day. Rarely do they happen the same day as an incident because the officers have a right to have a representative with them during the course of their questioning. And so it may take time. So it's not a very fast process. But if violations are found and policies, if the officers have violated policies and procedures, then yes, they are held accountable. And being held accountable can range from anything from a written reprimand all the way up to a suspension with review for dismissal.
The investigation is different since you down. Correct.
It all depends on the situation. There are times when, an officer, if they're involved in something that is, say, for instance, an officer involved shooting, then those officers are put on administrative leave, okay, with pay while the investigation is ongoing.
I'd like to take the floor back so we can move to public comment if that is all right, because I'm cognizant of time and there are a few more things that we need to get through. So there are some people who have asked to share with public comment at this point. So I'm going to call your name, and if you're still here, please approach the podium. We will give you 2 minutes to share. You can ask a question, however you would like to use that time. So we'll start with Rob Fulton.
People, so is anybody else allowed to speak or only the people that you have named written down?
Yeah, so we have the sign-in sheet. We'll start with the ones that are highlighted, and then we can allow for more. We're going to start with those.
The sign-in sheet, I signed.
Oh, okay. Oh.
So it's Rob Bullock here.
Mr. Bullock, we have a timer. He said he's going to speak from right there, Kim.
Okay, that's fine. Please do.
Yeah.
You want to-
I want to address the escalation policy that was already outlined in your ordinance, and the ordinance passed by county council. Responses, one response is right here. You got ordinance 2020-075 and 076. Also, you have Directive 26, which is your disciplinary procedure. Are you the union rep? Are you the union chief?
Yeah,
You're the union chief, right?
not the local.
Yep.
You the chief? Are you union chief?
I'm the president of the Delaware Commercial Building.
Yeah, okay, you're the president. I just want to know who I'm talking to, so. Well, as a result of the incident that happened at Dundee with the young man and the children, and what happened down at Route 40. This is why I'm requesting the board. I'm taking we, the community of Route 9 corridor, strongly recommend that progressive discipline as outlined in the Newcastle County Police Directive 26.2.C.1 be administered by the Chief of Police and coordinated by the Professional Development Unit to be given to Officer Garino and accompanying officers. The community recommends that a minimum of remedial training that exists or needs to be created in which a strong emphasis is on confrontational de-escalation techniques as outlined and enforced by Ordinance 20076 with the synopsis. Specifically, on June 9th, Officer Garino and the company officers were observed by the community of using excessive force by unprofessionally using abusive language, stopping, frisking, handcuffing, and overzealously detaining our children for jaywalking where a warning would have sufficed. Instead, they induced abject fear and intimidation, which diminishes the trust and confidence that the community has been desperately trying to establish with good intentioned officers. This recommendation will be read at the county council meeting to be made part of the record. And regarding we, the community of the Route 940 corridor, strongly recommend that progressive discipline as outlined in the Newcastle County Police Directive 26.2.6 be given to the officers that were involved in the Royal Farms traffic stop in Bear, Delaware. We anticipate that the Chief of Police will administer this action and direct the Professional Development Unit to offer minimum remedial training with an emphasis on confrontational de-escalation techniques during routine traffic stops as outlined in Ordinance 20075 and 20076. Specifically on June 29th, 4 officers were observed by the community of using excessive force during a routine traffic stop. Instead of issuing a simple citation, the immediate officer decided to operate outside of his professional duty and became personal with the driver. He forced her out of the vehicle, which he indicated that she would comply. The officer threatened her with a punch in the face. Another officer punched her in the face while she was on the ground. Another officer used a knee hold on her back, which is clearly in violation of the Ordinance 20075. Clearly the violation of that. And because the other officers didn't safely intervene verbally or physically, they were violating 20076 article as well. We recognize the difficulty of the officer to do this job safely and to return home to their families. But the community should also be protected from rogue officers within the rank and file. This is why the community council, this is the reason why the community council created the ordinance to prevent this type of situation from occurring. Coming home, by the way, coming home to our families safely is equally as important.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This will be recommended. It will be read at the county council meeting next Tuesday, both of these recommendations, to make it part of the record. And I will give each one of y'all a copy
Thank you. That was my next
of this
request.
recommendation.
Thank
So
you
that you
very
can follow up and make sure that we find out what happened, what is going to be done to the officers. At least we'll have a record of if they violate again, that we can compile the progressive discipline to the next level.
That's the whole, thank you for that. Next, I'd like to call Joe Walls to the podium. Joe Walls.
Mr. Walsh, you want microphone on or off?
No, you can have all.
Off. All right. Oh, we start the timer. One sec. All right.
You don't have to start.
Oh, we start the timer on.
You have to start.
Oh, see, Mr. Joe, you thought you were slick. 1 second. There we go.
I appreciate what the brother said. My name is Joseph Walls. I'm the CEO of Veteran Services, and we're focused on incarcerated veterans. Let me put this clearly. When somebody's breaking in my door, I don't call Ghostbusters. I call the police because I need somebody there quickly that can help me out of that situation. All right, so we need you. We can't survive without you. You guys, we depend upon you to protect our lives. And we depend upon you also to protect our lives when we're on the streets and being pulled over by the police. Now, I've been arrested ever since I was like 4 years old. I got arrested so many times, I knew Newcastle County cops by their first name. We probably exchanged birthday cards and stuff. All right? So I know what it's like to interact with the police. My problem is right now, look at you. Look at you. When I was a kid, police did not look like you. They were skinny, tall. They weren't all buff. We got a problem, man. We got a problem. Every one of these cops you see, they look like RoboCops. I don't know if they're on steroids or what it is, but I do know this. I know a lot of them are veterans. And we love our veterans. Make no mistake about that. I bring it up all the time. But a lot of these guys got issues, man. And when they go into the police force, they carry them issues with them. They don't leave that shit at home. PTSD, traumatic brain injury, or these guys being screened properly to make sure that they're not being hyped, overly aggressive. Because when you come in the neighborhood, you look like an invasion force. You got tactical gear on, like you're going into enemy territory, like you're going into Iraq or Afghanistan. You need to stop that. You need to get rid of that stuff because when you show up with that kind of equipment on, the whole dynamics changes. We need you, man. Help us help you.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to offer Christina Kelly to come to the podium. Christina.
Mic on or off? You can probably leave it off. All right. Big enough mouth. Hi, I'm Christina Kelly. Hello. I know I'm well known by a few people sitting in front of me tonight. My concern lies outside of just these two events. My concern lies with these are just the two that have been most recently caught on camera. And that we only end up having these discussions when your officers are caught on camera. Something you said specifically has got me shaking the way that I am right now when you called a group of teenage boys young men. If you stop my 13-year-old and start referring to him as a young man, it's me that you're going to deal with, not him. And you're going to deal with me at 100. They are not young men. Those are little boys. Those are little boys that needed your officers to explain what they did wrong. Because I'm going to tell you right now, 90% of the crosswalks that I've seen in the state of Delaware, I'm safer crossing 20 feet up the road. So if I tell my kid to walk across the street where it's safe for him to walk across the street, and next thing you know, he's pinned up against a fence with a bunch of adults, grown men, intimidating and harassing him,
It won't be in a meeting like this, and your cuffs aren't going to help. You need to leave these kids alone, teach them, stop abusing them. Because if we abuse a child, we're in jail, no questions asked. You abuse a child, you get to go in front of some of your colleagues, have them tell you, maybe next time be nicer, and then send you back out on the street. And enough is enough. Enough was enough 7 years ago. Enough was enough 10 years ago. The fact that we're still sitting here, we're just now getting this, is insane. How many more people need to lose their lives? How many more people need to sit up and be afraid to call the police when they actually need help? For you guys to actually want to make changes. And by want to make changes, I mean not sending the entire FOP to fight police reform bills. I mean not spending $13 million of overtime in a year's time to send officers in uniform to the GA. That's what I mean.
Misty Siemens, you're next for the hearing on. And there is a timer on the screen, so we'll do our best to try to keep everybody to the 2 minutes.
That's not fair. All right.
Good evening, Misty Siemens from the Public Defender's Office. I just wanted to make a couple of remarks. So we're here in part because one of the cell phone videos from Royal Farms got 535,000 views on social media. And the reason they got that many views is because people care about police reform. And one of my requests is that I hope that also the police begin to care more about reforming the police and making police safer for everyone. I'd like to thank the Newcastle County government for releasing an unedited, unnarrated video, unedited, unnarrated body-worn camera. Before this, it was always narrated, always edited, and this was a really important step for transparency in our government. I think that's the reason that people are upset about this is because the proportionality. In both instances, it was a traffic stop that got out of control, in my opinion, because of the police. And it's because of a pedestrian stop with a child that got out of control because of the police. I reviewed the Newcastle County use of force policies. There's 24 pages, 24 pages, 4 sentences on de-escalation. And I would ask the Police Accountability Board to consider making a mandatory or recommending a mandatory de-escalation policy and put that in place for the police. Next, we're reaching the 1-year anniversary of HB 205 and 206, which were beginning steps of reforming the police. And now we keep seeing that more police misconduct is happening, and we need greater legislative changes to have the reform we actually need. Besides the 1-year anniversary of laws that passed last year, next year is the 40th anniversary of the Law Enforcement Officer Bill of Rights, which has now been rebranded as PODPAT. That is why you're not getting the information you want. You're not going to find out publicly what happened with this officer discipline, because if it's not found to be serious physical injury, it's not going to be public, even under the new law changes. One thing I would submit is it seems as though the stop at the Royal Farms, there were allegations that there was maybe an expired registration. If that all turns out to be untrue, maybe you'll have access to it. But in both situations, the public doesn't have access to these misconduct records. They're not going to have. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to call Dave Beaver up, please.
My name is Dave Beaver, and I'm the Executive Director of the Delaware Center for Justice. I'm here to share DCJ's position on the incident that occurred at Royal Farms at Route 40 on June 29th. During a press conference regarding the event, Ms. Coleman, the civilian subject, disclosed her struggles with mental health, including post-traumatic stress disorder and anxiety, which she says caused her to have a panic attack while engaging with the police. At DCJ, we believe that individuals in crisis should be met with help and de-escalation, not the use of force, And we support the allocation of resources to respond to situations like this with social service supports that can provide such help. We also support resourcing extensive police training on trauma-informed responses, mental health, de-escalation, and age-appropriate responses. During last year's session, the General Assembly passed police reform in the form of House Substitute 1 for House Bills 205 and 206. Then, as now, we consider those to be first steps only. The episode at Royal Farms indicates there's more work to be done, and DCJ will advocate for statewide police file retention policies and additional access to records not included in last year's reform bills, and community appointments to the council and police training to prevent future instances like this one. We will also respectfully urge our lawmakers to reprioritize taking the crucial next steps that they promised and we expect legislatively toward policing reform in the first state as soon as they return to Legislative Hall in January. We take heart in the fact that the Newcastle County Police Accountability Board is looking into this troubling situation, and we support similar review by the Delaware Department of Justice and the Newcastle County Police's own internal affairs. Such transparency and eventual accountability, and they are two different things, are crucial to building community trust in law enforcement. Thank you.
Mr. Parker. You need the mic, Mr. Parker. All right, I'm gonna reset it. All right. You know, you got to say something.
So we heard tonight that y'all have training for the police. Y'all have procedures for the police. Y'all have a body cam on the police, and yet this stuff is still happening. That means the police that's doing it have no fear of the consequences that follows. I mean, people have been traumatized for 400 years. What makes you think that we're going to be calm and cool when you pull us over? We have seen people get dragged out of cars and everything else, and nothing happens. So if you exactly want to start training with some real people that can tell you, yes, I am afraid of the cop. Why? I still have flashbacks of Rodney King. I still have flashes of this and flashes of that. I get flashes of when you pull me over and tell me I fit the description of a person that did something. I ask you, were they driving a red car? That's not concerned. You fit the description. But I was behind tinted windows. Did I fit his shadow? Because you couldn't see me. But yet you chose to pull me over, ask me to get out, search my car, and I ain't even the guy. So we got to do better. We got to quit having these fake conversations. Oh, take the Citizens Academy thing. You ain't gonna act like the way y'all do. Those people aren't even in this room that keep doing this to us. We don't even get to speak to them that keep doing this to us. So how can change even happen? You got some more to say. You can whisper in my ear.
I apologize if I get the name wrong. Michaelina de Jesus. Please come up.
I'm gonna start now because it's a lot for 2 minutes. Okay, very quickly. I didn't even know that this was a thing. I knew it was coming, but I'm glad to be here to see that it's something. But it's unfortunate that, again, like someone else said, that something has to be caught on camera or major to happen for us to revisit this. I have a whole bunch of notes and hopefully just stuff is everywhere. But it's really crazy. I do have a couple questions. When a fellow officer chose to conduct themselves emotionally or respond emotionally, at what point do officers intervene? Part of accountability is holding each other accountable. Like we were taught, if you see something, say something, and that safety was for all. So the officers should be held to the same standards amongst each other. I think that sometimes when we get frustrated as citizens, when we see something that is done unjust, and we're looking at another officer witness these things, then at this point we know that we're not safe here. And then we have the system to battle. Let me go through my notes real quick. When they vocalize the hate, that they vocalize their hate I can't put it any other way. When do they intervene and how? Right? This is how they get the name of the biggest gang in America. Is that brotherhood and abuse of power. Let me see. Okay. Highlight. The badge does not excuse you. The law applies to all. Okay, a lot going on here. Okay. You mentioned here, let me go to the next one. You mentioned here that there's no standalone de-escalation policy, and that's kind of like a general thing for all. And then you said there's a professional standard unit to conduct investigations. When numerous officers are on a young lady, regardless of how they got there, being punched in the face and no one else stopping or doing something about it, and you don't need anyone to investigate that. Thankfully, video went viral. We see that. So we don't have to, like you said, fake talk and sit behind these meetings. Like, it's very much there. And we want to know what happens to these officers. Do they continue to work? When they become a threat to us, do they continue to work? Do we have to wait till investigations is completed? You don't need to do that. When you know that someone murdered someone and it's very much there, you do that and then you do the rest of the things afterwards. That's so much stuff in here. Okay, I'm not gonna be a rebel today, but I will be back next time.
I would like to add that you all can email your public comments to NCCPAB@newcastledE.gov. It's written on both flyers back there. So if you haven't had a chance to get all your thoughts out, please email us your comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Taylor. We have one more, and then we're going to move on to finish our agenda. Then we'll open up the floor to any additional public comment if there is. Representative Medina Wilson Anton.
Representative there.
Good evening, everybody. Hey, all right, I got 2 minutes, y'all. My name is Medina Wilson Anton. I serve as state representative for the 26th district, which is where the Royal Farms is located. Part of the situation, Walder Road, where the officer says he saw the improper lane change, all that, that's all my district as well. So I'm familiar with the area. And I'm also familiar with the advice to not pull over right away when you're worried about your safety. And so all of that made sense to me. And it makes sense to anybody who's familiar with that area. I wasn't always afraid of police. There was a time where I was with some friends and we were driving and it kept rerouting us because the road was shut down. And I decided to pull over and ask the police for directions. And as I walked towards the police officer, he put his hand on his holster. Now, imagine me 12 years ago, maybe buck 10. Put my hands up immediately. Since then, I realized that my weight doesn't matter. My height doesn't matter. What matters is the color of my skin and how I cover my head. Didn't plan to share that tonight, but I think that's important. We talk about this topic that it was shared earlier by others. Trauma is real. I've never been abused physically by a police officer, but I've seen enough, and just that motion was enough for me to realize, whoops, shouldn't ask this person for directions. I don't have that privilege. Now, what I took issue with, one thing I took issue with this evening was hearing the idea that instead of talking about what's going on in the moment, we'll take that up in the courts. That's a joke. That's disrespectful. Because for our communities, the court is not often where we get justice. And I think most people in this room know that. So that, if you heard me back there, that was my response to
And if I'd like to give you one more minute to.
Thank you. I'll try to keep it short. I just want to say I'm here because my community has been loud, has been outspoken. You heard them tonight. That was in my district. I immediately did what I could, but I want to make sure that I'm always showing up. And it was said earlier that what we did last year was the first step. I commit right now on the record to helping with the next steps. And I would ask that the police commit to being partners in that work and not obstructionist. Thank you for your time.
Very much for taking the time to do that and also working with us as we're going through trying to keep to schedule. It is a lot of passion that is brought here and we don't want to diminish that or take away from that. But we also do need to try to keep to our schedule.
Virtual public comment?
Oh, are there people there that have asked?
I'm gonna ask.
Okay, yeah, please. Thank you.
To the folks on Microsoft Teams, is there anyone who would like to make a public comment? If so, please use the raise your hand function.
We will have more opportunity after.
And we will have another opportunity for public comment at the end of the meeting. Alrighty, with no public comment virtually, we're gonna move on to the next agenda item.
Thank you, Caitlin. All right, so the next item on the agenda is any other business that the board has brought forward for any reason? Is there anything that was not added to the agenda that you have thought of?
Can you reiterate the question?
Is there any other business that you've thought of that wasn't on the agenda that needs to be brought up to the board?
Yes.
Yes, please, go ahead, the floor is yours.
I mentioned back in either April or May about the suggestion of trauma-informed approach training. And I'm just following up, if there may be to it, we can follow up to find out what the next steps are. For those that may or may not be familiar with that particular training, it covers cultural competency, it covers accountability, it covers respectability, all principles that are absolutely consideration for future training for our officers. So if we could look into that, would be great.
Absolutely. And are you recommending that training for the board or solely officers?
For the officers.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
We do have this cultural and cultural awareness.
If you could speak up on.
I was saying, we do have it's called cultural awareness. And involved with that is the implicit bias training. But it does touch on a lot of the things that Ms. Scribes talks about. And at some point, maybe probably not right now, but we could go into detail and bring in some information about what is covered.
Yes, that would
Okay, well, I would like to state for the record that I would like to request to have a follow-up done on that so that that is available to the public, so they were aware as well.
Is it possible to look out to what trauma-informed training is currently available to police officers, like nationally? Because I think that equating trauma-informed with responsive or cultural awareness, while they are deeply connected, they are different because trauma changes your brain and how you respond to things. So I hear your point. I just don't think that A and B are talking to one another.
That's something that we can push to our committee, which we recently formed. And so we'll be hearing briefly from the chairs of our committees, and Dr. Whittle has taken on the chair of research, and I think that'd be a very appropriate one for you to take on, if that would be acceptable for your committee.
I just wanted to add.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think there's clarification. Everybody, folks who may not be aware, is that, as you mentioned, trauma informed is an approach. I would agree that we will research that, but I think also we want to be clear that trauma awareness, cultural awareness is not the same as cultural responsiveness. It's not the same as cultural competence, but it's an aspiration for whatever it means. But I think it's important that as we think about supporting the community and building religious, that we all begin to use the same language. I think that was brought up earlier, is that if we're not understanding the same language, if we're calling a little boy a man, and that's not understood, and then we're calling cultural awareness, cultural competence, and cultural responsiveness, we're not talking the same language. And until we start speaking the same language, I think we're going to only be at an impasse. Most of what we're talking about was started by communication. So I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you very much. Any other business unrelated to that or any other comments you can make before we move forward?
One thing that came to my mind is I think it may have been our first or second meeting, there was a discussion about the community outreach group doing I Know Your Rights. And I'm just wondering if that is going to be during a regular meeting or something that is more the public forum that was discussed.
When I turn it over to Deshawn for the committee updates, I'll let you respond. Thank you, so. Perfect. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and then kick it over to Kaylin for a report from staff.
I just have a few quick updates. So just a reminder for board members to sign up for a committee if you haven't already. I've received a handful of responses, but we can use more people on the bylaws committee as well as the research committee. Secondly, all board members will be given a county email address. All you have to do is call our IT department during normal business hours, and they will walk you through the steps on how to get your account set up. Third update, we have joined NAPOL. It's the National Association for Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement. We are now members, which comes with a few benefits. One of my favorite benefits of being a NAPOL member is that board members can join their national committees. So they have committees of civilian oversight experts and professionals and board members who meet monthly. They share processes, best practices, and things like that. So you'll be able to network with people all over the country. Last but certainly not least, in terms of meeting locations, I've submitted some facility rental applications to Red Clay, Colonial, Brandywine, and Christina school districts. We've been approved to hold events at schools within Christina. I'm just waiting to hear back from the other school districts. That's all.
Thank you so much, Kaylin. Okay, we will now hear updates from our newly formed committees, which I know not all of them have started yet, but I am going to kick it over first to Lishan, who is the chair of our community outreach. But yes, I see a hand is raised. I think we'll wait until public comment.
Gotcha. So yes, we have officially formed the outreach committee that will help expand our efforts around our outreach. Another thing, going back to what was mentioned earlier, is that the board is holding a Know Your Rights training, and this is going to be at the Leader Elementary School, which will be next month.
Do a date present at the during the board meeting.
Yes, it's during the board meeting. Okay. So the third Tuesday of that month, which is I believe the 20th. Maybe not, don't give me the line. The 20th, yes.
Perfect. Wonderful, thank you. And then, of course, Dr. Tanya Whittle has agreed to chair the research committee, which happened this week, but that occurred. But is there anything you want to say? I know you haven't met yet. So is there anything you want to add as chair?
Just that I'm looking forward to some collaborators, as was mentioned. Still looking for some volunteers for the. All right, sounds good. And so just to clarify, I know that there was mention of the trauma-informed mental competency, and there was I think an ad hoc committee looking into the Johnson County's use of force with moving vehicles. So I guess my question is that operating separately, or will that be falling underneath the research?
I would like that to fall under the research. Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Do you know if Mike has been started or kind of started in?
I do not believe so, but we will ask. Thank you.
And I've also had some discussion around that, and I can share notes about that with you.
Thank you. Wonderful.
All right, so thank you for letting us get through the rest of our business portion of the meeting. That is now complete, and we will move back to public comment. If there is anybody that is interested, it would help if you either, James, so 1.5 seconds. It would help if we know who, so we can make sure that so raise your hand, or so tell us that you would like to get in on the public comment. Yes, I see many hands. James, would you mind letting somebody? I really appreciate that. And we did have somebody raise their hand virtually, so we'll start with them. We are going to keep the 2-minute timer best that we can. So I will let you know when your time has come to the end. Please wrap up your comment at that time and we'll move on. And then if you could state your name when you approach the podium, that would also be very helpful. As a reminder, we have this room until 9. So we'd like to end public comment no later than 8:45 so that we can give the library the perspective of cleaning up and moving out before they close up the building. So online, please, Caitlin, thank you.
Hey, Brenna. I see you have your hand raised. Feel free to unmute when you're ready to start your comment.
Fuck, my settings.
Can you hear me, Brenna? Okay. Well, we heard you when you just said. Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh my god, I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. It's
Hi, my
okay.
name fuck. Okay. Hi, my name is Brenna Christianberry. I am a Newark resident. I've lived in Delaware forever. I just graduated from the University of Delaware with a nursing degree. I wanted to be an EMT for a while to get extra like experience for the medical field. And I saw the Newcastle County EMT program. I thought that it was really cool. There was going to be like a lot of different experience. They can carry extra meds. There's like, I think advancement pay, but I didn't do it because of the proximity to the Newcastle County Police. I did not feel comfortable, like being in the same building and like just having that proximity. And that made me not want to join their EMT program. And instead I just went back to school. So I'm just uncomfortable around the police. That's all. That's all I really had to say.
Thanks, Brenna.
Thank you, Brenna. I don't.
Thank you.
Hey, Jessica. If you are ready, you can start your public comment after you unmute your mic.
Hi, thank you. My name is Jessica Skarain, and I really have one simple comment. I think that particularly when we have incidents that happen in our communities involved with our police, and we have police present at this board, I would frankly like to hear from them. What did those two people present say to their colleagues after these incidents? Because if this is about accountability, I'd really like to understand what the people that are coming here to be present with us are doing to make a difference in their department. And if it was nothing, then I'm really disappointed, and I hope that we get new representation at the next board meeting.
Thank you, Jessica.
And then in the room, I'm so, yes.
Oh, I'm gonna just talk from here. I don't have to go voting. I just had a comment for the representation from Newcastle County Police. A request actually to please start holding police accountable and so forth. In a recent article that I just read today, actually, another police department settled over 6 figures for a family that lost their loved one due to police violence. Over the past 3 years, taxpayers have paid upwards of over $10 million in settlements, in which Newcastle County Police Department is a part of in totality. And we're starting to see a vicious cycle begin of cops who engage in use of force, whether it's in violence, use of force, and in death. They are held not doing anything wrong by police. Then civil cases are paid out to the families. So I just ask y'all, please just start holding these cops accountable for beating people up and killing people.
That's right.
I saw another new hand. And please, again, if you're comfortable, share your name, so.
Good evening. My name is Sandra Smithers. I'm a lifelong resident of the Route 9 corridor. And I just have a couple of observations, a few observations. First of all, The first thing I noticed is that the audience is very diverse, which means that they are experiencing this across the board. Although it may be more in communities of color, it still makes a statement about the experience that communities are having with the police.
Amen.
Police are designed or supposed to be there to serve and protect. There is a great distrust across the board of policemen. Then you have to ask the question, why is that? And if that's the case, then what's being done about it? It's clear that police are not being able to train police because nobody has the trust of the community. So it would seem to me that it would be very important to engage the community in terms of how you should correct the situations that you have with the police force and the community. The police, very few police come from the communities they police. That's a problem. And no matter how much cultural training you have or cultural competency, if you have never lived that life, you cannot police that community effectively. So I think you need to consider that. And one of the things that I am a proponent of is using people from the community to help the police the community. So so many of our young people, especially young men, have stringent background checks when they want to be police people. And in that case, they are oftentimes eliminated because of their felony. I just finished this one point. Okay. Um, then we need to look at a more stringent psychological test of policemen before they are hired. A very deep dive into their background, their cultural experiences before they are hired. The veteran just said that, yes, some police come with PTSD. That needs to be considered. And thank you very much.
Yes, please.
Can I stand from here?
Yes, you may. Thank you.
Say something. I got into an accident one day. It wasn't even my fault. The lady, white lady, it's me and her. She ran into the side of me. I called the police. I had a witness. A police officer, a woman, got out. She went over to her car. She never asked me anything. Went over there. She was talking to her. And I said, "Excuse me, officer, I called. You shut up. And when I tell you to talk, you talk." Okay, I'm almost 70 years old. I had to deal with that. Okay, so he go on and talk to Miss Janet, and Miss Janet left. So I said, "Well, what am I gonna do?" She came over and gave me a citation. She said if I keep on talking, then she was gonna take me to jail. I didn't even do anything. She hit my car. She hit my car and she gave her the citation and she left. So, I don't understand. What is the problem? What is this hatred and this dislike and whatever? I didn't even get my call. You shut your mouth. And when I turn to talk, you talk. I was holding in her. I could tell. And it's heartbreaking. It really is. You're scared to drive. You got to make sure everything is right. I went to DMV and they put my middle name wrong. I said, no, get it right. If I get pulled over, I'm not trying to get shot for that. Right. I mean, and he would say, oh, it'll be okay. No, for you, it'll be okay. So I just wanted to, say, I wish they wouldn't do that. I pay taxes. I'm good to people. I'm kind. I'm caring and everything. And I called the police and I had to go to court and I had to pay. I had to pay. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Hands of those. I want to get some new hands. Yeah, go ahead and then we'll go over to you.
Oh, that's so good. Go ahead.
Please go.
I promise I won't be long at all. My name is Joshua Brown. Director with NCPC now, R9 CPC, and also the economic development. I'm from this community, Rosegate, and I have not always been an activist, appreciator, or people for the community. I'm really actually because I'm really passionate to it. And honestly, a big issue that I have right now is making the kids that I'm around understand the need and the respect of policing. Right? For example, I have probably like 6 kids that are like boobs to me all day long, right? They believe everything that I say, right? Because they know I love them. I treat them like as if they were mine. I don't even have any kids. And PK had said something to me one day and it bothered me. He was like, bro, you always saying the police is cool and it's cool to be a cop. He's like, you do all this stuff in the community, but when Newcastle County started lighting up the app, and this is me, so I parked my car and I got on my electric scooters because I didn't want to get pulled over, right? And I'm like, for the first time, I seemed like I was a liar to him in contact with him. And I don't really don't know an answer for it, but I can't lose the trust of my kids because I love them to death, but I be scared for them. I really do, and I honestly don't even got no big nothing against them. Like we'd be in anarchy without that, honestly. But I really the people that we need to fix the situation are in here, and it's nobody comfortable with being in uncomfortable situations. Or really like how y'all stand accountability. But the start has to be with warming the community. Like, I don't remember your name, sir, but what he said was like, King, I'm from Rosegate. And like I said, I wasn't always right. But when the police come, it's either I know somebody was getting hurt or I know that somebody got to get you. You got to do whatever it was. I have a extensive background, like a lot of police chases. And the reason why,
So if you can finish up.
I was finishing, and the reason why is because I was more scared of like going to jail or running into the police and crashing my car at 100 miles an hour. And that's what we got to undo. I changed. I shake. I got prison for them, but that's what we have to do. I don't know the answers, but that's something that really like from the youth on Newcastle corridor. I can honestly say that we got to do something to change. Thank you for your time.
You want to put a timer?
I asked, we have someone virtual.
Oh, yes, we do. All right. Councilman Street, we ain't gonna put a timer on you.
Now we're gonna hear from the man. Well, I'm not gonna be long. I've been dealing with police misconduct, police issues, police reform since I was in high school. I was doing this before I got elected, ran for office, but this was part of the reason I ran for office. And I'm 20 years in, and I've tried, hasn't worked too well. On the one hand, I've supported everything police wanted. And in return, I've gotten deadly force in the last month. And what I have said publicly over the last 2 years, I'm dealing with one police agency. If you run on foot and you get caught, you're going to the hospital. I'm dealing with another police agency. If you flee in a vehicle, they will shoot and kill you. I'm dealing with another police agency. If you shoot or shoot at one of them, there ain't supposed to be a trial. Now, if you ain't part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And I want y'all, I talked to them and lost my hair, my teeth, and everything else. I'm talking to y'all. In 2004, I thought that I had broken up throwing females on the ground. First complaint I got, man said my wife was in next to the Mercedes dealer on Lancaster Pike, and they made her get out and get on the ground. I went to the police chief at the time, said it'll never happen again. I was hoodwinked, bamboozled. I just didn't know it till I got the call
on the 30th. Two things I would like for this accountability committee to consider, and that's recommending that the use of force should not be the same for females as it is for males. And two, specific training in dealing with youth. It's a matter of fundamental fairness because I'm an old man, but when I looked at that video, if that was my wife, my old behind is going to jail. And I looked at that video and I thought about if that was my grandson, after I dealt with him, I'd have gotten some trouble. And so I would like for you to seriously consider looking at what they can and can't do, should and shouldn't do with females and interaction with youth. Because see, fundamental fairness, and I said it publicly 2 weeks ago, let 3 black cops go up into an affluent area and throw a white woman on the ground and punch her in the face. And everything in this state will stop. All the rules get thrown out the window. Let 3 black cops pull up on a white kid in an affluent area, and they'll all be fired, and everything in the state will stop. It's a matter of fundamental fairness. They have to treat my people, the people who put my little behind in office, treat them the same as you treat everybody else's. Until then, you're not going to get, I know you're not going to get no peace from me, but you're not going to get a whole lot of peace from this community. This is the epitome of the worst possible community relations you can have. And generally, and I said when state police shot and killed a young man in September at the Lowe's, that in my opinion, state police was out of control. And in my opinion now, county police is out of control. And the only mechanism we have in place right now for any semblance of form and change is what y'all recommend. And those are just my 2 suggestions. But here again, I want to thank you for your service. And I appreciate you volunteering your time, but things cannot remain the same. Thank you very much.
Teresa, I am going to allow you to unmute your mic so you can give your public comment. Teresa, you should be able to unmute your mic right now so you can start your public comment. Maybe we'll come back to Teresa.
I just like to piggyback off what the young man was saying there. Saying at the last meeting, I was saying something about when we're going up by Yorkshire side of the garden. And we're coming up, police were in the neighborhood. So we wasn't really scared of the police. Like he said, I don't want him to be alive. I got 12 grandkids. But I don't want them kids to look at him like he's blind. And the only way you can do that is to come back to the neighborhood. To go, not just drive through. Get out your car. Walk around the neighborhood. Walk through the park. Shoot the basketball. That's what they done with us. It faded away. And I think the last time I asked you guys, it had something to do with the budget. I was told no, with the budget. It wasn't even. Yeah. How can we get, because like they were saying, we got young men that made mistakes when they were kids. And we all know that record still favorite. But how can we develop something where if you can't be in my neighborhood, he can be in my neighborhood, representing you? If that makes sense. I mean, because the only way we can really fix this is if we interact with each other. That means you gotta get out your car. You gotta walk through the neighborhood. You know what a horse, we have horses coming through the neighborhood. Wasn't nothing like running up and petting that horse. You know what I mean? So even if we can get back to that, that will help this area tremendously. I believe. You know, that being said.
So,
Community policing.
Teresa, I've allowed you to unmute your mic. All you have to do is just hit the unmute button. Your mic shouldn't be disabled anymore. Okay, let's move on to, I think Natalie, I think I seen you had your hand raised. Someone else? No?
I do.
Oh. Yeah, no, that's fine. We'll keep working with Teresa. If we
Teresa
can.
can jump in on me and I will move. Did she?
Oh, James, you know what, James, you were waiting very patiently.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
You give me an extra minute.
That's good. Good,
Rob, what you said
What's up?
was good. Although those aren't the people arresting us. The community police are different from the ones that are arresting us. You got to understand that. You're not sending those people in. My point is this. I want y'all to listen. I want y'all to listen to this and think about it. We interrupt your scheduled program to bring you this breaking news. When y'all go over your agenda, these people are here for breaking news. You need to say, hey, look, something has happened in this community. Let's do our agenda later and get to the breaking news. Our people are hurting, scared, tired, and angry. And you want us to sit through agendas. We need immediate attention. We need things to be put us first. Y'all can go over your agenda later. Matter of fact, y'all can Zoom later and do that. You can. You actually can. But acting like you don't make rules. If that's the case, you don't make rules, then y'all need to stop this. Y'all need to break this up right now if y'all got to follow guidelines. That's the problem. Somebody got to break it so this can be broken. But if y'all don't break it, it's going to keep doing the same thing over and over. We need this. We are showing up because we need this. And if you think your agenda override what we need, then there's no point of you doing this because this will never change. Let me tell you about our area. I don't know how many people came in the front driveway. Okay. Oh, I get to finish, right? Because you let everybody finish. All right.
Just the thought.
When you read, see, we got to break it. Anyway, when you pull down in this driveway, on the left-hand side, what did y'all see? A bunch of clothes in the grass. You go to somebody else's, this is a $30 million library. You go to somebody's library on 100,000 and they're cleaner than our library. How in the world is this happening? It's right in front. You pull in. You telling me nobody in this library said, let's pick up those clothes because this is our library. Stop treating us like this. That's all we're asking. Stop treating us like we're trash.
You haven't spoken.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I will continue to prioritize those that haven't had a chance to speak, just so you all know. Go ahead.
All right. How y'all doing? My name is George X. I want to offer. Oh, I'm a native of Delaware. Lived there all my life. I've had the privilege of living in pretty much every area of Delaware. I'll wait. You know, when I was listening to everybody speak, I had mixed feelings. I was hurt listening to everybody. I was hurt listening to the community share a lot of emotions in their stories. I was hurt listening to the redundancy of the problem. In 1967, the issue what is called a Kerner report. It described a lot of this condition that we talked about here. These things exist for years. 1967. I want to jump. Wilmington, Delaware did something, I think in 2013. They did a report, I think the Wilmington City Council with the CDC, and they described the condition dealing with gun violence, dealing with our youth. Again, they reiterated 1967. Here it is, 2024. I'm listening to a young brother. Thank you, Joshua. I met the brother not long ago, so I got a privilege of feeling this energy. I love the brother's energy, but I don't want his energy squandered. So I'm a little older now. There's another kind of subculture that we have produced because we keep allowing for the need for redundancy. And that subculture that we're producing is with this new generation. They're not like my generation.
You're 2 minutes up. I'm going to give you another 30 seconds.
I will leave. And I'll write it in. I will write it. But this new generation, we have a chance. They're not my generation. I'm the baby boomer generation. But this new generation, we don't respond. We generally go along. This new generation, we're producing a negative reaction from our children because they've heard these stories that all of us have said to each other repeatedly, and they see that it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Our degrees mean nothing. Saying words like culture sensitivity, risk assessment, and the Vera Institute, because these are all things that's been Delaware, done and used in Delaware to establish these risk assessment and these responses. And this has been redundant for over a half a century. Thank you.
Hi, I'm not a native Delawarean. I'm actually from California. My name is Crystal. Um, I'm a healthcare provider. I have been for over 2 decades now. Um, and I'm the co-CEO and co-founder of Just Health Restoration. We're a health and social justice change agent. And something that you said about what does, checking what compliance looks like. Being a fellow public servant, the fact that you said that concerns me. If I was to step into a hospital room and say to a patient, what do you look like? And use bias against you to determine whether or not I can care for you or not to do the right thing, that's concerning. And just for me standing here, it bothers me. That doesn't fit right with me. You're a public servant. You serve, and just like the woman said, protect and serve. We all have bias. It's a mental shortcut. But it's when you drop the bias at the door is when you really make changes. I've had a personal experience with the police almost 30 years ago, where I was brutalized by the police. They beat me up thinking that I was someone else because I was a Black female. And I fit their description. I kept telling them I'm not this person. I was just going to the corner store. You said that you have a pretty good track record of all of these things. You know, we don't really have these kinds of issues. But what about those things that go unreported? I was afraid. I didn't want to tell anybody that this happened to me because I thought that somebody would hurt me. What about all those things that don't get reported? You can't sit here in the face of people that have been hurt and harmed and say that you have a good track record because that's not true. It can't be true because people are telling you it's not true. Also, cultural competence, try cultural humility.
Teresa, anyone else in the room who hasn't had a chance to speak? And who has wanted to go again that, okay. What's that?
Do we have any public comment online? Teresa, Natalie, I see your hands were raised earlier. Please raise your hands again if you would like to make a public comment.
They can also use the chat as an option.
They can, yeah, they can.
Okay. Then no, we won't do that. Go ahead, yeah, if you want to.
I'll stand here, we already know how. So one thing for our very busy police officers to keep in mind, somebody like me gets looked at as probably an addict or something along those lines by you all. I know this because your officers actually regularly say it to me when I run into them. This happened because of me standing up against the police. So things like that are things for you all to keep in mind when you have interactions with everyday people. My last piece is just a question, and I know we won't get an answer to this, but it would be nice, maybe at the next meeting. When's the last time that you guys substantiated a use of force claim? And what would that officer have been charged with if they were a non-LEO citizen? Thank you.
Right behind her, I'm staying right here, real very good. So I wanted to comment again on, I think she left, but she mentioned about use of power. And we see that constantly all over. Like when we have officers like Marino who have history in the city of Wilmington. And so constant footage, like they said, incidents that aren't reported, that are reported, and nothing gets done. So that really shows, how safe we can feel. You mentioned, officer, what is force, and you explained like many different levels of force and what that looks like. I'm gonna go back to the getting punched in the face. It's obvious, right? And we have to take accountability within the force to hold each other accountable. I just want to make a recommendation that when other officers, and it should be full ball, however you want to do it, when other officers, it's multiple, because you said that there are heightened situations where we get it, you may be running, by the time you encounter, you're up here. However, during the times, there are multiple officers that come. When one officer sees that this person is responding emotionally, aggressively, doing something, all of them there that do nothing should be held accountable for that conspiracy. I think that if we had a little bit more of that, then we would feel a little bit more safe. But knowing that we are against this biggest gang in America, we don't feel safe. That small thing, that small gesture will allow other people to give the voice within the force. Because then what about your officers who sign up? I'll give voice to your officers who may want to say something, but they also feel intimidated by the administration of the officers because they are not allowed to maybe do this in public, that there are many ways that they can intervene. We don't see that happening. We know that there's many lists of how they can intervene. We've never seen that happening. Very much important. I would like to know, last thing I swear, what's the number to call the police on the police? Hold on, I've been arrested twice this month in June from abuse of power. One being at Legislative Hall, the other one, I'm not gonna get into it, but abuse of power, because I'm gonna have my day, yeah? But this has to stop, right? And so I need a number to call the police on the police. I shouldn't have to come here every single time, or, you know, if I did call the police, so I left a complaint. I want to know.
You're gonna have to ask that we move on.
I'm gonna write you. Email.
Please do. We have an email address. I would very much like that.
I got a lot more.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, Bond, you want to do this?
Am I able to be heard? Can you hear me?
Oh, Teresa, give me one sec. One
No,
sec.
no, no, Teresa.
Don't touch nothing. We can hear you,
Okay.
but just give us 1 sec. Someone's gonna make a statement.
Okay,
Just
great.
to answer the question, when was the last time that an officer was arrested? We had an officer, unfortunately, that was arrested for use of force that took place in our turnkey area. How we learned about that incident was by officers. We have a policy called duty to intervene. And there were officers that were back there that actually saw this, that brought that to our attention. That officer was subsequently arrested and charged and is no longer in force. So it does.
Walk away with his pension. Tell the rest of them.
What's that?
And walk away with his
We
pension.
have no say over that, sir. We have no say over that. That's beyond our control. We control the administrative part. We have no say so over who gets a pension and who doesn't get a pension. I can't speak to that because I'm not involved with that aspect.
Director, I very much appreciate it. We need to be careful. If you have something to say, we'll do it at the podium.
And I was going to wait, but I wanted to say this also. I've heard everything that was said here today. And like the gentleman said right here, man said right here, that he is hurt. When I tell you that I feel the same way, I know for a fact that we have great officers on our police department. That she did. I know that we have officers who will give the shirts off their back to individuals.
Get rid of the back.
I've been there where officers have bought items out of their own pocket for families that were in need. I've been there when an officer handled the death of a 1-year-old. The next day, that officer went back to that house with baked goods that his wife and his mother made to give to the family. I sat at my desk as chief of police, and I read the letter that that family sent, talking about how their impact changed their family and their process and their thought process about Newcastle County Police and police officers in general. Do we get it right all the time? Hell no, we don't. We are human. And I still say we are retired, but we are human. And we don't always get it right. Raise your hand in here if you ain't never made a mistake.
I'm perfect.
And there's sometimes when a mistake is a mistake, and there's sometimes when that mistake is intentional. And I have a problem with any officer that makes an intentional act that goes against policies and procedures. None of us go out here that I know go out of here with the mindset of doing a disservice to the public. And what we want, and what we want, though, is for any officers that are identified, for the officers that work with them, to report them.
Okay.
What we want is for the residents and the community, if you have a problem with the officer doing something, to report it. Every complaint that comes in gets investigated. The sad part about it is, and I know this is the problem that everyone has, is you don't get a chance to know the outcome. I'll be honest with you. I wish like hell we could just open up the thing and say, go look. Open up PSU and go look. No, you can't. I can't do it. That takes a change of law. Am I correct? But we can't do that. I'm talking about me personally. And other officers who feel the same way. Listen.
We're gonna address things that.
Okay, well, I want to wrap up. What I want you to understand is this. This is a forum, and this body right here is a group that we all look forward to working with in order to change things and to make things better. Not just this group, but each and every person out here. This young man right here, Josh, Brother James, anybody, Miss Smithers, we have worked hand in hand with Miss Smithers going back years. And when we had our community engagement specialists that were assigned here to foot patrol, and you're right, that foot patrol, they make a difference. When they're in the communities, they make a difference. And Ms. Smithers, you were a person that was very fond of the officers that we had over here, and you talked about the great work that they've done because you got a chance to know them. Unfortunately, right now, because the complaint load is what it is, our officers don't have the time to get out and get into the community like we would like to see them get. You know, especially when we're down as many officers as we are right now. But we need to get back to that because that is what makes a difference. That is what builds the bond of trust in the community. That is because it's not the police against the community. The community can't survive without the police, and the police can't survive without the community. And like I said, we're not one. I don't live in a gated community with just police. So I live in the community.
You live in a $500,000.
Okay, all right, Christina, Chris, let's let Director Bond speak. Magdalena, let's let him speak, okay?
Okay.
Christina.
Okay, but here's I'm gonna finish with this. I think that we are on the right path. I think that we have a variety of different people here with different skill sets. We have the Office of Defense Services here. We're willing to take input from them, and we're willing to come together to work with one another. We're willing to work with whoever in order to make sure that we are doing things to the best of our ability. But understand, we're not perfect. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to add that when I reached out to Director Bond and Captain Faulkner and I asked them, do you all have a de-escalation policy? And when they said no, I sent them a policy and they immediately responded and said, yes, we are willing to work with the board on creating a policy like this. So progress is being made and we appreciate you all for your comments. I am going to go to Teresa because she's been waiting. Teresa, hopefully you can use that mic. Okay, you have 2 minutes.
All right. I just wanted to quickly say that I know we've been talking a lot about what recently happened, but I also want to bring to light about how some police officers use their badge to commit sex crimes against women. And myself, including others that I know, have been pulled over, and we've pulled over the right way, not right away, and have been surrounded by supervisors and the first cops on site and just used as sex objects. And so I think that should be something that that should be considered as well, because that's another form of abuse. That's another form of degradation, and that's another form of fear. So that's all I wanted to say. I don't need 2 minutes. I just wanted to make that statement to interject to make sure everyone knows that that should be something we should look at as well.
Well, obviously, ma'am, if that's something that you encountered, then we certainly want to hear about that, and would like to hear about it right now. So I'm not sure if Ms. Caitlin can get that information, your contact information, and we can reach out to you because that's certainly very concerning.
Okay, yeah, I can do that.
Okay, Teresa, I'm going to give you my email address and can you email me your contact information and I'll send it to Director Bond?
Yes, thank you. I'll do that.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone else virtually who wants to share? Dave, I saw your.
Be brief. Because I've been thinking about everything that's been said tonight, and I promise this applies. I got on a plane for the first time since the pandemic, before the pandemic last week, and as I'm sitting in the plane, 23 years out from 9/11, that runs through my mind every time I get on an airplane. There have been 1 billion flights since flight began in 1903 or 1913, I can't remember. But for the rest of our lives, those of us who lived through that, if we get on an airplane, that's what we're going to think about. We're not going to think about the many, many times everything went right. Most of the time it goes right. I'm a leader too, and part of my job is focusing on the positive when there is negative to be addressed, and I appreciate your openness to hearing about that. But for the people in this room who do not look like me, what they remember is what the people in the video look like who look like them, who are being responded to in this way. And I can't blame them for assuming that when they get pulled over, that is how they're going to be treated. And I just wanted to point that out. And that is the beginning of a trauma-informed understanding of the work you're doing. And I really hope that the officers you supervise think about that in their daily operation. And thank you for listening to me again.
The joiner. I just had two quick things to say. I definitely hear you on keeping in mind that when an officer goes into that situation, that they're worried about going home. I hear you on that. But I ask that all officers would keep in mind that they have training, we don't. So you should be held to a much higher standard. If we're expected to remain calm, then there is absolutely no reason that an officer, a person that has a badge and a gun and training should ever escalate. I work in de-escalation. I do not have a badge. I've worked with the community. I do not have a gun. I can de-escalate. I don't understand why that's not the norm and the standard for the officers every single time. Your voice should never go up. It's not necessary. You got a whole gun. It's not necessary. And then my second thing is, I do want to thank you for being here. But please send a message to your fellow officers. The fact that there's only two of you here sends a strong message. In order for there to be communication, in order for there to be relationship and this to get better,